Hello everyone, and welcome back to another exciting online event from the Oxford Guild with our Collegium Global Network and our partner societies from leading universities. Today we are delighted to be hosting a special online event in association with Choco on why students should consider joining high-growth startups over corporates to skyrocket your career. This invaluable panel discussion masterclass and Q&A will discuss startups versus corporates, how best to begin your career, navigating recruiting in the COVID-19 era, and all things tech, sustainability and startup related. We hope that you'll find it helpful with plenty of advice, tips and key information on the latest innovations, the pros and cons of startup careers and more from Choco, one of the world's fastest growing and most exciting startups, which has raised over $60 million in just 2 years. We are delighted to be joined by our 4 esteemed panelists, Alex Keeley, who's the city lead in Madrid, Gabrielle Michels, Director, Engineering Management, Izzy Warner, Global Head of Account Management, and Leo Bernard, Talent Acquisition Lead Europe. Thank you all very much again for joining us today and for sharing your time and insights. So we'll begin by showing a brief 4-minute video about Choco before kicking off the discussion.
And welcome to the Choco headquarters. I'm here today to take a look around to see what actually happens here and what drives the Chocorians so much. So let's take a look around. It's quite remarkable when you think about that a small group of people comes together, works on an idea, and what had started in a very small office is now in a little bit of a larger one. And so a lot of challenges come up with it, especially on a day-to-day basis. But let's quickly check. Oh, look, it's our COO. Let's check with him. Well, in fact, Marco, real quick, what's one of the main challenges that we're facing at Choco at the moment?
I think it's pretty clear. We need to go way faster.
Faster and growth? Well, that's actually quite interesting because if we've done one thing, we've grown quite a lot in people. Let's take a look. This is Lara.
Hi.
Lara, what do you do at Choco?
I'm a software engineer.
Ooh, nice. What are you working on at the moment?
This is Swift.
And what do you do there?
Actually, I'm trying to exterminate bugs. You know what? Call me the exterminator.
Okay, right. And this is Kartik. Kartik works in business intelligence. But where are you actually from?
I'm from London, Alex.
Oh, very nice. So how does London compare to Berlin?
Berlin's 10 times better.
Nice. How about lunch going out in Berlin? Is it cheaper?
20 times cheaper.
Very nice. German beer or British beer?
German beer.
Hey, Sarah. How did Choco grow so fast?
How did Choco grow? Well, as you see, everybody's focused, unlike you, wasting my time right now.
Oh dear, you're totally right. But actually, I do have an interview. So let's quickly go. That interview is done. And getting new people is just one part of it. In fact, there are Chocorians all around the globe helping Choco to grow. So let's take a look at what it looks like at other offices. Here we go.
I wake up feeling like you won't get right. Are you ready?
Exciting stuff, and I'm taking Alex with me for that double skills.
Yeah, one of the cornerstones here in the Bay Area is, of course, account management, which Izzy has been rocking.
And you can see I've got my own coffee and I'm part of the crew now. So I've got some customers to talk to.
Hey, all right, welcome. Let me show you around. So this is the palace office. Now Nathan here, he's one of the most driven people here in Choco. Always high performing, always team focused. But Nathan, what makes you so driven?
Actually, I grew up in Congo, where people just live with dollar. And I understand that you have to fight to get what you want. And this is why I'm so driven. Every time I wake up in the morning, I just want to eat everything. I just want to eat every restaurant. I'm hungry. I want to close everything. And I'm just driven by that spirit, that I have from my life in Congo.
Wow. And that was quite the journey. Actually, I do need my lunch now. But what's incredible to see is the mindset, how purpose-driven everybody is. Everybody's very focused and committed to their tasks. So it's very nice when you kind of get these moments where you can have your lunch and then just basically chat.
Alex, are you joining us for soccer?
Soccer? Let's go.
As an office, we are competitive, but also on the field, we are more competitive. Come challenge us.
And while we enjoy our funtivities outside of the office and here on the pitch, we also meet up globally, and then we go on retreats. Check out this.
Awesome day, awesome weather. Let's hit it. Let's go have some fun there. Then we're gonna party, have some drink. Let's go, baby!
We seem to have missed the moon slightly. We ended up in Marrakesh, but no problem.
So I think we'll start now with the panel discussion. So Leah, I'll leave it to you now.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan, for this nice intro, and I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Actually, like fun fact is like EC just said in a Slack that she never saw this video before, which is like kind of like the thing. Like this video is world-class legend, and she just said that she never saw it before. So it was the first time for EC as well. So today we are the four of us, and Dan introduced who we are and what we did. So briefly, like the main things, like few questions I'm going to ask you to each other, and we'll start with our Gab, which is done here. First question will always be like the same, but before we start with Gab, like just like a quick intro on my side also, because I'm gonna be asking questions. And yeah, my job is to hire people at Choco in Europe, so mostly Germany, Spain, and France. This is all you have to know. Pretty straightforward. So yeah, I spend my day pitching Choco and talking about Choco to different candidates all over Europe. So yeah, like it's gonna be different because I'm gonna have to talk with like internal colleagues in front of you, dear students. So Gab, first question. Basically, like what happened? Why did you start Choco? Like why did you do these mistakes 2 years ago?
Sorry, like which what's the mistake of going to Choco actually? Yeah. Was that it?
What's the main reason why you joined Choco 2 years ago, Gab?
Oh yeah. So first of all, my name is Gab, or like Gabriel. I'm the director of engineering at Choco. Super stoked to be here. And to answer the question, so 2 years ago, yeah, I actually came to Berlin like 2017 to actually found my own startup. I'll talk a bit about like what happened before my own startup in a bit. But I started my own startup. It's pretty typical story. Like maybe a lot of you know that 9 out of 10 startups usually fail. But yeah, basically we survived for like 6 months, like on our own money. It was 3 of us building some SaaS service also for HR basically. And classic mistake, we ran out of money. And after that, like I was pretty much exhausted on the day that I decided to not move forward with my own startup. I had dinner with Dan, our CEO, basically, and he was at that time the advisor of our own startup. So startups have like an advisory board, like of experienced people to tell you if what you're doing is wrong or right, basically. And so Dan was one of them, and he basically said, well, it's a pity that you failed, but how about you join my own startup that is just about to launch. And so that's how I got to Choco, and I started off as a mobile engineer or a software engineer, together with the CTO, just us two. In the meanwhile, also like the other 2 of my own startup are on board on Choco as well, so they all got picked up by Dan. And yeah, so here we are, like you know, like as a software engineer we started, and then like we moved on to engineering management after a year's time. Like we were about 6 engineers at that time, and like it's developed into you know, a situation that like we needed more structure and management inside of the team. So that's how I moved and like went into the role of engineering management, which is primarily focused on the people of an engineering team. I focus on hiring and on productivity, basically, implementing processes, and everything basically what is necessary to keep the engineering team running. And then like after another year's time, or not quite a year, that's then when at that point we were not anymore 6. We were then 30 engineers, and I basically like earned the trust of the company that like everything is going well and the team's going fine, that they trust me with the role of the director basically. And yeah, that's where I stand right now. And yeah, I'm super happy, still super happy, like like as if it was the first day to be here at Choco.
Nice. Thanks for that intro, Gavin. Like basically, like what's the, if you have to sum up like the advantages and the cons of working in a startup, what would it be?
So I think so I just described like the basically my career after coming to Berlin, like doing my own startup and like deciding to go the startup path. But like before that, like I've done pretty much 10 years corporate, like 3 different corporates. So like I started my career not studying, but actually going for an apprenticeship, which is in Germany a sort of a kind of thing where you do 3 years of studying and working, and then you basically stick to the company, which is RTL, which a few might know. It's pretty huge in Europe. It's a TV channel, RTL Group, and at that time they were 10,000 employees, right? Like, it doesn't get more corporate than that. And then like after that, like after 7 years, I moved to Hamburg to a gaming studio or online gaming studio, as when the browser games were picking up, like Farmville and so on. I moved to Big Point. They were like 800 employees at the time. And then I moved to London to a online gambling startup, which is Gamesys, Jackpot Joy, etc., from the UK. So that was like my journey before that. And I'd say like, the advantages over the corporate life, like it really didn't took long to see the advantages, which were like, if I describe, like I show you my learning curve, and it was like, okay, this is my career basically, like going like this, just steady, growing. And then as soon as like I started my own startup, it like goes very steep, and it goes like just all the way, because you get thrown into the deep end. You get a lot of trust. You have to figure out everything by yourself. You have to embrace the adventure, more or less. And like in a corporate environment, it's like everything's more stable, steady, secure. There's already, for everything, there's like a path set into stone that you go down, and you get more like rather tiny bits to grow your experience, right? So that's like on that side what the difference is. And like it's also like, if you look at it, it's like harder to how do you say it, like get more responsibility when you go down this path of like being stable and steady, right? There might be a career path, and after like 2 years or 3 years you evaluate, okay, you are now a senior engineer or whatsoever. But like it really, in a startup, it's like, okay, it's really what output you have, what counts, right? And so and that's how you basically gain the trust of everyone, that like, yes, you do a lot more than people would expect you to do. And I think the growth in a corporate environment usually comes through switching the whole organization, like to move to a different company, and usually not inside of a company, which you have the opportunity to in a startup.
All right, thanks for that. So it's Gabriel again. I mean, okay, it looks beautiful the way you say, like it looks like everything is perfect, but like I think you have like one failure to share with us. Like it involves a database. What happened that day? Let us know about this big failure of yours.
Well, there are 2 things actually. Like, with my own startup, right? I already said, like, you have to figure out everything by yourself. And we had like, a first test with a client. It was a huge one. It was Adidas, right? And they were like, okay, let's check out your tool. And it was like 1 hour before the meeting, sleepless nights, obviously. And then I go into the tool, want to clean up a bit the database, right? And then I press a button, and then I was like, wait, which button did I just press? And then I checked the data, and the whole database was gone. And was like, holy shit! Like how do I fix this now? Like in like half an hour is the meeting. What do I do now? Like so like, luckily I had a backup. It was not very like it was a backup from like 6 hours ago. You had to run. I was like super stressed. You could not talk to me, and somehow I managed to get it running for the test, and like also explain, okay, for some people you might need to sign up again. It was not a big deal, but like, you know, your heart drops down when those kind of things happen. And yes, like this is the typical failure of an engineer, like to drop production databases, right? So yep, that was definitely a learning for me.
Nice. And then to conclude on you, Gab, maybe like what is like the only in one sentence, like the one reason why students should not join a startup?
Well, I guess if you don't like an adventure, and if you prefer something more steady, right? Like something you can plan for, something like I always like to say as well, that an impression that I get in well, it's way over one sentence, I guess now, but like I'm just gonna carry on. Is that yeah, like there is this mindset in many people to, okay, success. What is success? It's like, you know, joining a very well-known company, and then I'm going to go down the path of rising up the ranks, and then I'm safe and secure and my career is done, right? But like, is that really what you want to achieve, right? Like in the end, like we all want to grow, right? And one of our engineers also said, like, if you're not growing, you're in the wrong place, right? So I think the startups is a great place to just like grow exponentially, basically.
Thanks, Gab. And we all realize that the top one quality to join a startup is concision. So thanks for that that one sentence. Now we'll move to Alex then. So Alex, you're I think on this call from Barcelona at the moment. Same first question, like what happened like before Choco? What happened when you joined, and how did you come to soon launch a city? Let us know.
Yeah, so thanks very much for having me, guys. Super excited to be here. Also very cool to hear more about my colleagues' stories. I only know Gab really from retreats, and I've seen a bit of a different side to him than this very professional self he's presenting. So very nice to hear about Gab's past life as well. Yeah, no, so for me...
that's enough.
Yeah. For me, I actually graduated from Bath last year. I did international management in Spanish, and sort of I've always been interested in startups. In my second year of university, I started writing some business plans, ended up winning some competitions and getting a little bit of like pre-seed funding. Then managed to sort of convince university to let me launch a startup in my year abroad from Madrid. Had a couple of guys doing some remote tech work. Similar story to Gab, it failed pretty quickly. And yeah, it was a very humbling experience, and actually hit my confidence quite badly, I think. And so then when I came back to university in my final year, I was really sort of unsure about what I was looking for. I didn't know whether this failure on my own thing meant I wasn't cut out for startups. Did the typical thing, sort of apply for consulting jobs. And then got to this stage, yeah, we got to about February time, and one of my best friends actually just sent me, like literally it was just a job description, and said, hey, like some guy I know, they're recruiting for this. I think it sounds quite cool. Tried to search for Choco online, and we were in stealth mode at the time. And so we literally didn't have a website. And yeah, so I applied for this job, had like a few random interviews with all these like incredible people. And yeah, I just absolutely love the interview process because you could see the genuine care and the energy in people. But then it came to around July time, and I was making a decision. And I actually accepted an offer to go to consulting in London, and rang my friend Will, who works in product for Choco. And he was like, no, you have to come here, which is like actually a bit of a hard sell when the company doesn't have a website. But yeah, he basically managed to convince me, much to my parents' dismay. And yeah, basically went and started last September and joined for the launch of our Barcelona office. So it was 4 of us, none of us were Spanish native speakers. And like after my first day going into restaurants and being laughed at, I was thinking, okay, like what am I doing here? But basically just came down to this like can-do attitude that's like quite infectious. So everyone at Choco just worked super hard. We ended up growing very quickly. And then off the back of like good performance, I was basically made the city lead for Madrid. We were going to launch in sort of March, and then a little virus happened and it sort of put some delays to the plans. But we'll be launching now like the start of September. And yeah, it's kind of amazing because when we launch in September, we're going to have a team of me plus 8. So I get this responsibility sort of within a year of graduating. And I just feel incredibly humble and grateful, really. I think it kind of shows what Gab was talking about, how quickly you can develop. I think where I would have been if I'd taken that job in London, the consulting, it would be nice. I'd be probably a lot more stable. There wouldn't be so much change. But in terms of the learning curve and the responsibility you get, like it's just completely unparalleled. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and then what I'm doing now.
Thanks, Alex, and can't wait to be on site with you beginning of September to see like the launch of Madrid. And now like just one other question that I think it wasn't only successful at Choco, and you have like one big failure to share as well that concern, I think, potatoes. Can you share with us this failure about potatoes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm not sure we've actually like explained really what Choco does. It's just sort of why it came to me. But basically, we have our whole idea is to make the supply chain more sustainable and reduce food waste. And the very first step of that is we have this app that makes it very simple for restaurants to order from their food suppliers. So like in Barcelona, the average restaurant will have about 15 food suppliers, and they'll send some orders by like WhatsApp, email, SMS, fax. It's like a complete mix of channels. And so what we did is we created a free app that allows restaurants to order from all their food suppliers in one place without their suppliers needing to have the application. So I create a chat, and then you go boom, 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 send the order. You send the order via Choco, but Choco automatically converts that order into the format the supplier normally receives the order, be that email, WhatsApp, whatever. So the whole idea is it centralizes it very quickly for the restaurant. But every time the restaurant then makes like a first order to a new supplier, you have to make a confirmation call. You have to check they received it fine, make sure they don't hate Choco, all this kind of stuff. And one of my very first users, like when you're starting off super anxious, it was quite hard because my Spanish wasn't good enough. And this order, like I rang up and they said they hadn't received the order. And then I was put on hold. I was ringing, getting super stressed out. I went online. I was just abusing this poor lady on customer service. Like, how have you not received this order? Like 20 kilos potatoes, all this kind of stuff. And then my city lead was like, hey, look, is everything okay? Let me see. I shared the website link. I was like, this is a joke. Spanish customer service just sucks. Like, this would never happen in England. And then I just see him like laughing and he's like crying on the floor. And he's like, mate, scroll down. And it turns out I was on a wheelchair supplier that was also called Caralto. And I was just giving some wheelchair customer support abuse about why they hadn't delivered 20 kilos of potatoes. And so I think this is when there's like so many different things going on. You're moving so quickly. Sometimes you get a bit insane. So that was probably my big failure. But yeah, it was a lot of fun at the same time.
Whoa. And yeah, also like big learning from that, and it never happened again, right?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll better not talk about the other mistakes too.
Cool. So Gab shared about like the main reason why like not join a startup. Like I have one last question for you, Alex, before switching to EC. How do we do to get your amazing pitching skills? How can we work on that to be as good as you are?
I don't know about that one. Yeah, I don't know about that one. I think if you'd seen me in my first week, you'd have thought, what a hopeless, lost man he is. No, I think just practice. And we do also do quite a lot of interviews a day. So explaining the pitch happens quite a lot. So practice, and just work hard.
Wow. Okay. Like this is a good thing. Like I don't know how many times you had to pitch Choco already. Like in a year, but might be a lot. No, I don't know how many hundreds of times.
Yeah, a few thousand times. This is the good thing. Like the thing is about startups. So this is actually quite an interesting learning. I think is so when I was doing my own thing, every no I got like really hurt me, and I find it super tough. And coming to Choco was really cool because now we're like a 250 million company in the space of 2 years, which is insane. Like one of the most successful startups in the world, without a doubt, right now. But you still see the amount of no's we get and the amount of people saying no. And it was like a real realization for me that to get anything going, no matter if it's like got incredible product market fit, that it like really is a truly great product, you're still gonna get so many no's. And so if you don't even go into startups, you go into consulting, whatever it is, I just think that is like an incredible learning to take from it, just to say fuck it to the no's and just keep going.
True. Thanks, Alex, a lot for it. EC, then you're next. Actually, like Gab, you're from Berlin right now. You're in Berlin right now. So EC, maybe same first question. Who were EC Warner before Choco?
So I was actually at Oxford at Brasenose studying classics, so it doesn't really scream tech startup. But I thought alongside, delving into Greek tragedy and being told it wasn't super relevant for the real world, I caved and did a bit of student consultancy on the side, which I'm sure some of the people on this call have heard about. And whilst other students were being given kind of cool companies like well-known restaurants in the city, or doing a consultancy project for British Army, my team were allocated a dry cleaning company to work on their SaaS, their software as a service. So that was my first insight into the tech world, which was a bit dry, I guess, so not the most thrilling. But it kind of gave me this first insight into okay, maybe a classic student doesn't have to go work in a museum, or maybe I'm not just going to be destined to be a classics professor. And most of my friends were kind of the penultimate year were doing their applications and intense interviews for whether it be law, banking, consultancy. They're the classic kind of triad that I felt most of my friends were doing. And part of me wanted to kind of follow that route just out of the sheer kind of competitiveness. And, there's definitely a lot of prestige attached to these big companies. But I just didn't really feel very inspired by it. And I think I was really didn't find it appealing to do something where I knew what I was going to be doing, each month, where it's kind of laid out. Because I just felt if I knew what I was doing, then I was doing something predictable. So after meeting the founder of a kind of film and TV startup who offered me a job, I was like, sure, I know nothing about the industry. I was pretty curious to see actually how it works behind the scenes, kind of representing cinematographers, editors, and all of the people who aren't actors, basically. So I took a job there after kind of 8 months traveling around, Argentina and China. And moved to London and was sleeping on my sister's sofa for 5 months. So that was a good start to my London life. And the first 6 months there it was a startup, so it was a pretty steep learning curve, but mainly because I knew nothing about the film industry. But I really loved negotiating deals with producers and kind of doing all the contracts essentially. But after 6 months, I realized the learning curve was very much just because I had zero knowledge before, and the company itself was not really looking to grow. It was everyone there just kind of wanted to kind of go home at 5. And in fact, they were very risk averse, and also didn't really appreciate me asking questions. So I'd started kind of looking back into the tech startup industry and kind of found a tech recruitment company. And then the best thing happened. I got fired from the film and TV agency. So I really had zero excuse to stick around, and saw an advert for Choco on Facebook. So immediately applied, and long story short, moved to San Francisco a couple of weeks later. Was hired for sales, got there, was having my kind of onboarding session, and they were like, oh yeah, so I know you kind of came here for sales, but actually we have this new role, account management. Here are 300 restaurants to look after. Go. So I kind of gone from 2 weeks previous being in an office, writing up contracts, scanning papers, to cycling around San Francisco, walking into people's kitchens in restaurants, not houses. I want to clarify that. So just talking to chefs basically about the app, getting them on board, and meeting just all kinds of people. It's obviously a very, very international industry, the restaurant industry. So you're meeting people where it's you're around the corner kebab shop or a Michelin star restaurant, and people from all over the world. So it really was a complete change of scene. London and San Francisco, also very, very different cities. So I was in San Francisco for 3 months doing account management. And then the sales team will move to Seattle. So I kind of took over managing San Francisco and the whole Bay Area. We had kind of extended out for a couple of months. And then again, quite a dramatic change of events. They asked me to move to Chicago. So that weekend, I packed my bags and moved to Chicago and kind of managed all the USA account managers from Chicago. So that was really cool to kind of move into more like managing a team role. Although going from summer in San Francisco to winter in Chicago was quite the shock to the system in many ways, going to kind of minus 20 degrees. But then after a couple more months, I then moved to Berlin to kind of set up the global account management role. And so then I was kind of moving from managing a team of like 3-4 people to about 18 account managers across Europe and the US. So again, that was like incredibly amazing, but slightly terrifying steepening of the learning curve again. And I moved back to Chicago to help hire people there. Lockdown happened, and so I was back in the UK, and now finally back in Berlin for good. So yeah, I think that's my summary of the last year. It's been slightly mad one, but wow.
So all of that in 1 year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that was 1 year. 1 year and 2 months now.
Okay. Cool. And I know that you're kind of like running late, Dan, right? So like maybe like one last question on your side. Ici, like what was like the biggest success? Like you were like stealing like a restaurant from a competitor or something like that. Can you elaborate on
So someone in our kind of city team in Chicago was having a really bad sales week. So I went out and thought we'd do like a day of sales together. So we kind of just wanted, like Alex said, it just takes a lot of practice, like practicing the pitch, and you just got to get over that, like getting hurt by people saying no. So we were like, where best to try out getting rejected than Trump Tower in Chicago. So we kind of made our way into the big labyrinth of very opulent kitchens down there. And they were like, how the hell did you get in here? They were obviously like, what are you doing? Get out. We've got like a whole special system set up. And so we were like, okay, that was fun. And then we made our way to a Michelin star restaurant that we knew used a competitor app. Again, we were just wanting to like kind of play around the pitch whilst thinking it was obvious we were going to get rejected. But we just ended up getting on really well with the chefs, and they've become some of our best users, hosted us for Thanksgiving, and yeah, got a free 12-course Michelin meal out of it. So that was definitely one of the highlights of Chicago for sure.
Wow, that's a good job from your side. Dan, should we launch the Q&A now, or I have like a tiny conclusion if you want to make, like up to you.
If you want to do the conclusion, then we can head on with
All
the
right,
questions.
then it's going to be max 2 minutes, so we'll go like 3:35. I had my story plan, but like, like it's team first, so like my team was took a bit longer. I won't share what happened in my year at Choco, but like this is the conclusion in the end. It's like the sentence that was in the quote is like, this is in a career, what matters is not what you do, but how fast you do it. Like the common point between the four of us is like, if we have chosen like another path in a corporate or like in a consulting firm, it will have taken like much more like longer to be at that kind of like positions that we have today. When I see like my colleagues that graduated, like my ex-students that graduated the same year as I did, they don't have the same career right now. Like they don't evolve in a different way. That still is interesting, and I'm still happy at what they do. I'm not saying that you're unhappy in a corporate, but like this is like not as fast as what we can do here, like in a scale up. And basically, like just the 3 things I wanted for you to conclude is like, let's say now you're like, okay, hey, I want to join a startup. Like from my recruiter's point of view, like the 3 things that you should do if you want to be good at interviews. Be ready. Like this is tips that you never get every day. First one is simple. Like just don't hide. I mean, like, like the 4 of us, like the way we are today, like this is us in real life. Like we don't hide behind a suit, we don't hide behind a mask. We just like go in front of you like the way we are. And sometimes it's a bit potentially weird because you're not used to it in a professional environment. But just don't hide yourself. And if you do it, you have like more chance to get a job. Second thing is like to do your research like a lot. We are all passionate about what we do, and if you apply to a company, no matter the startup, no matter the kind of like environment, well, you have to know potentially more than the person you talk to. Like if you apply to like a big corporate, people won't really necessarily care about what drive them. But if you apply to a startup, you have to make sure that you know a lot about your industry, so you can convince that you're really, really passionate inside it. Because right now, I'm doing like 10 interviews a day, like even in August. So I mean, between someone that is convinced and passionate and someone which is not, well, I mean, I let you do like the math, like the person I would choose. And the last thing and the last one is you don't have to avoid to be like in a startup, like kind of like a trap, you know, like avoid the red flags. Like I want to join a startup because it's dynamic. Oh wow, I really love chaos. Or like regarding food tech, for instance, like don't ever say, yeah, I want to join Choco because I love food. All this kind of like red flag, just don't do it. So just if you have to sum up, if you want to join a startup, like the 3 things: first, be authentic; second, be passionate and do your research; and third, avoid the red flag and the cliche sentences that no one wants to hear. And then it will work. And now I think Dan, it's time for QA, so I leave you the floor.
Sure, yeah. Thank you all for sharing your experiences and insights. I'm sure everyone's got a lot from it. And we've been getting a lot of questions from the audience for you. So I'll get straight into it. The first is from Dylan, who studies PPE at Oxford, who has asked, do you think COVID-19 has meant that the Choco app is needed more for restaurants that may be in and out of lockdown, given they can have increased transparency with suppliers?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So yeah, we've definitely seen a big shift in the restaurant industry. As soon as obviously lockdown happened, it was like for someone, you know, for us who work in the restaurant industry, it was obviously big bad news. Loads of restaurants shutting down. But those who were able to like adapt and kind of pull through, maybe even like better the other side, it was all down to tech, essentially tech and kind of engaging with users either on social media, getting on like delivery platforms. And so a lot of the restaurant industry was kind of renowned for being very old school, literally like pen and paper, writing down what they want to order, calling up and leaving a voicemail. So I think it's been very beneficial to kind of have this shift in mindset where they really see the value in tech, how they can, yeah, exactly like you said, get increased transparency, be able to kind of track their orders, be able to collaborate with everyone in the restaurant, can be on the same account and see what each other are ordering, how much and when. So we just like, it's a lot more accountability in terms of like knowing they've sent their orders, a lot better transparency and collaboration. We're hoping like in time, we want to be able to kind of really knuckle down on the data that they can get and access. So we send out kind of monthly reports, giving them an overview of everything they've ordered. So I think actually the value of tech has really, really grown and become even more obvious through COVID-19, actually.
Brilliant, thanks, Izzy. If anyone else wants to comment on that question, please do. Otherwise, we can go on to the next question.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's not so much on that one, but on the restaurant side. But I do think it's quite interesting. So, long-term strategy is about going up the supply chain and making it far more data-driven and like, efficient. I think what's been quite cool, at least for us in Spain, on the restaurant side, it's been a bit tough because some people literally just aren't getting enough money coming in to actually warrant making an order to a supplier. So they go to like a local market. But we see as suppliers realize that now they have such poor tracking on their side that they're far more open to using technology. So while we've been hit like a little bit in terms of like user numbers on the restaurant side, we're actually making up for it on the supplier side. So it's like taking a short-term hit to actually like advance us quite significantly up the supply chain and more towards like a long-term vision. So it's kind of interesting how initially you think it's going to be terrible, and in the meetings now we're able to get is very different to what we could get before actually.
Great, thanks, Alex. So I think we'll move on to the next question, which is from Jane, who studies law at LSE. Her question is, Choco has grown rapidly in just 2 years and is a scale up now rather than a startup. How has the culture changed in that period from going from a startup to a scale up? Can startups that scale rapidly maintain their culture?
Maybe Gab, you want to answer? You are the oldest one, no? In Choco.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So like to comment on this, I think like I would always say, like no matter which stage, that culture is always work in progress, and that's like you always have to like keep an eye on these things. And I think for anyone who wants to found a startup themselves one day, I think it's super crucial to have like a sense of culture from day one, right? And have people on board who drive it themselves, right? Like who live and die with the company, right? And like move this thing forward. And I think moving on, like, you know, when we went to the different cities, like you take these people and they drive it and like show it to their people inside of their teams and they live by it, right? We have our values, which are called TOFU, right? Team, ownership, focus, and understanding. And so like, you know, yes, it changes over time, over the 2 years, right? But it doesn't, it's just something normal, right? And you have to like be aware that every new joiner that comes in, like has the same experience than like, you know, a new joiner 2 years ago, right? There's a reason that we have like a saying called F new joiners, right? Which is like there's no such thing as new joiners, right? You're from day one a Chocorian, and as long as you have people on board who take care and like pay attention to culture and hold each other accountable, I think you will have a long, valuable core for the company.
Great. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Just to add up on what you mentioned, Gab, like the one crucial thing as well, and of course, like I will talk for what I do, but like is recruitment, because like if you have like this expectation on candidates and like the people we join, if you only get the best one, well, they will add up to your culture, and usually like people are afraid to change the culture, but like actually it's like an addition of every single like super smart, full of energy and brilliant person that join. So if you make sure that recruitment's like number one priority of the organization, and that you never ever hire someone because you need someone at the moment, but you're waiting months sometimes to get the right person, well, you make sure that your culture will never disappear if you're making an effort here. So recruitment, I will say, if one day you have to launch your own company, it's number one thing you have to know how to do, is like to do like a perfect recruitment.
Yeah, our CEO Dan interviews every single person that like gets to the last stage. So with like 200 person company, our CEO still interviews every person. So I think that sort of thing definitely helps.
And just to add a final point, is also like internally, culture is like a core aspect of how you actually progress in the company. One of the benefits of a startup or a scale up is that because it doesn't have this very rigid, like you spend 2 years, your reward is like you go up a level. It's very much, we kind of value one side, the like attainment, you know, are they hitting their targets? Are they really succeeding in terms of numbers? But always it's 50-50 with culture. Like, are they having a good effect on like everyone around them and as a team, rather than just like how they're performing individually? So that's why we kind of take these two factors into when we're looking at who should kind of take the new positions within the company.
Awesome. So that sort of leads us into the next question, which is from Claire, who studies mathematics at Warwick, who's wondering what, this is just to the panel, I think, so what have all of you learned most from working at a startup like Choco? And do you think you could have learned similar things at a corporate, or at least at the same speed?
I think one thing that's pretty rare in startup is how close you are to like every single department. And especially one if they foster this like very, very open culture. For example, we have these whole company calls every week where there's like anonymous questions. You can ask any question you want. It's like insanely transparent. And just like sitting next to, you know, Gab and I, although we're not sitting next to each other right now, we are in the same office, and like I can just ask him anything about tech. I was in Paris office with Leo just last week, talking to him about hiring. So you're not just like learning at a crazy rate about, for me, like account management and the operations side of thing, which was already a steep learning curve, because I was kind of like, you have a responsibility thrown at you at a rate you just don't even expect. But it's also getting that interfunctional knowledge base as well, which I just was not expecting, and has been like super eye-opening.
Also, like I just add not so much to do with like general learnings on a function or anything, but more from like a self-confidence point of view as well. So you come into like a grad scheme, whatever, you're like a group of 20 people there. Whereas here, like people like really truly believe in you and you get like a lot of responsibility. And I think the impact that can have on you, not just in your professional career, but in your personal life, it's quite a powerful thing when you get into a room with 200 people. It's like my first day was this global summit in Berlin, and the energy people have there, the self-confidence, not like an arrogance, but it's just like a genuine belief we can do anything we want as long as we work super, super hard. Like that kind of energy and mindset is infectious. And I just don't think you get that in other environments. And I think for me, that's like the biggest thing I take away from it. If I left Choco tomorrow, this mindset would mean I think I'd have success in whatever different company I went to, because that sort of mindset underlines success in any kind of job, not just like at startups.
Yeah, and I think also, like we brought up already, the responsibilities. I mean, like throughout my engineering career, I was a front-end developer, like one specific language. And then like you come into the startup and like, please do the database. Well, it didn't go well, like I did fail, but you have to deal with it. Like you're thrown into the deep end. You learn a bunch of technologies, and or we saw like with Issy going from sales to AM, right? And like general advice, like I think Richard Branson said it once, like when someone offers you something or like more responsibilities whatsoever, say yes and figure it out later, right? So then you take the opportunity.
Yeah, nothing to add on it. Perfect.
Cool. So the next question, I think Leo has touched on this a little bit, but if there's anything else to add. So what makes someone employable to a startup? What do you look for and also avoid when hiring? And how do you recommend students stand out over the competition?
Yeah, I would like the three advices I just gave a bit before, like answer partly to it. But the thing is, you just have to like. I will answer first to like the last part of it, which is like the how to stand up for the competition. Like, don't do the things that all of the career advisors say to you since you joined uni. Like this cover letter that is like impossible to read because you don't understand half of the sentences that overcomplex for nothing. Just don't do it. Like on your resume, you have to show clearly that you just like what makes you a good person. But mostly, you will always have like a place when applying to a startup, like to find like a backdoor, to find like a shortcut. This work all the time, especially like at early stage startups. Well, you won't find them on like I don't know, like on LinkedIn, because they don't have money to be on LinkedIn, and they sometimes don't have like a LinkedIn page. So always find for the backdoor, and always find for like the friends and friends of friends and friends of friends. Go to events, go to like places where like startups can meet together, and find the backdoor. This will give you like better opportunity that everything that is visible. So find the hidden markets and stick to it. Other thing that what makes people like employable in a startup, like it's simple. First, like you have seen like the main thing we have in common, like the energy that we have, the four of us. And I mean, you just cannot work in a company like that is developing a lot without expecting to work at 100%. I'm not saying that you have to work potentially more than in another company, but like when you have to work in a more intense way. So you have to make sure that because you are committed to what you do and you really do believe that you are making an impact, that will make you someone employable. So you have to show from first second that you have in an interview with someone that you will make an impact. So you have to show that you have made your researches, that you know how you could add something. And if you say, oh hey, I just noticed that for now you don't have anyone in data analytics, and it happens that I'm studying on my own, like to do Python and to do R and to do all this kind of stuff. So I can help here because I know that you have no one. I've seen it. I know about it. So show that you're taking risks, that you're anticipating the needs, because this is always what will make you stand out of the crowd. If you are able to anticipate what a startup's needs, like it's perfect, because startups, they don't anticipate sometimes. They just like go with the flow and like, oh, there is an emergency, you go for it. Another one, you go for it. Another one, and you don't have the time to think about like 6 months, 1 year, 2 years sometimes. So if you have the candidates, you can bring solutions because you have time to think about it. You will be employable. And yeah, I would say last thing is, I said it before, but just like stick to yourself. Like also, if you don't want to work in a startup, but everyone around you say it's cool and you want to go here, like just don't go. I mean, it's not also for everyone. So be honest with yourself and just realize like which kind of life you want to have now in 3, 5, 10 years, and from that you can deduce what you want to do. Like don't rush into something, but before like think long term, and from this long term you deduce the short term aspects. That's really what I would say. But I think like actually Alex right now is doing a lot of interviews also, so can add things on it potentially.
Yeah, just literally be genuine completely. I mean, it's really, it's tiresome when someone is just like yeah, just not being themselves, because you do get there and you just like in the middle of the interview, then they start sort of opening up and revealing about themselves. And also don't kid yourself, like it's really not for everyone. And I think so much of what we're taught at university and like our education system, particularly in the UK, it's just like, okay, like you got to do this and get in there and you behave like this and that's how you get there, rather than just being honest with yourself, going, okay, this isn't for me, I can do it. Maybe you're incredibly suited to investment banking consulting, maybe you're incredibly suited to startups, or maybe you just literally just want to have like a 9-to-5 job, really enjoy your social life, and that's completely fine. But just be honest with yourself what you're looking for, and then when you apply for the opportunities that suit you, then it'll be easy because you're just generally yourself, the passion comes across, and you'll find the place you want to be in. So yeah, I'll just say be truthful with yourself.
Great, thanks guys. I think there's some really invaluable advice there for those thinking about applying. Our next question is from Neslihan, who's studying engineering at Imperial. And he's wondering what the biggest challenge that you've had to face at Choco as a result of the pandemic, and are there any processes that have changed due to it that you might keep after it passes?
So much changed. It was like the way we did, especially like speaking from the operations side. So I think a lot changed from me and Alex. So before, I think we were just like all about the on the ground hustle. We were literally like spending all day, every day out on the streets, walking into kitchens. Can you imagine what that would be like during a pandemic? So we were just suddenly all flown home essentially, because we were also, I was out in Chicago, Alex was in Spain. So suddenly, the whole operations team were having to do their jobs. Instead of going into restaurants and bars and stuff, we were very much in our, either at home or back in, living with parents. So that just completely was a complete change in how we did operations as a company. And it really gave us the time to actually get our processes set up. What are the systems and tools we need to be able to manage things remotely, be able to communicate with restaurants remotely. So yeah, I think that was like one definite big shock to system, but one that really made us kind of get our act together in terms of kind of setting up the processes. So now we have that like added flexibility. We can still go back out onto the field in cities that have reopened, but we have the other option now, this kind of like second bow in our arrow to also be closing restaurants and managing accounts over the phone, which has been really, really helpful.
Yeah, and I think like just to speak from an engineering perspective, like obviously for us, not much changes because we can work from everywhere, no matter where. And like we had like the 3 most productive weeks in the first 3 weeks of COVID, right? But still, like some things that changes, like from going from an office environment to remote working, is that you see that the day has just limited hours, and you have to evaluate like the way you communicate, the way you do meetings, right? FaceTime is not like you cannot just go on with it. And so like we really evaluated like the meetings themselves, like could this just be an email? Could we just like do this asynchronously, etc.? And this is like how we gained even more productivity, and this is like something that will stick around. We have like a meeting etiquette. We came out with like a day which is like for the whole tech, so product engineering and design, like no meetings at all on Thursdays. So these are the things that we came out of the pandemic.
Great. Thanks for the answers, guys. I think we'll move on to the next question, which is from Pierre, who studies natural sciences at Cambridge. He's wondering, what do you think is the trickiest thing about working for a startup, and what do you least like about it?
This is a good question. I think there's always that flip side of unpredictability. On the one side, it's awesome to kind of be thrown into different scenarios, like part of the adventure. But on the other side, it's slightly infuriating to start 1 week in one city and find out, oh, can you just move continent next week? Which is exciting on one sense, but if I'm gonna just be very selfish and personal about this, I had Glastonbury tickets, suddenly moved across to San Francisco, and had to sell them, which is obviously gutting. But in all seriousness, it's definitely super, super intense. So like what we're talking about with the hiring process, if it's not for you, then that it would be horrible. We're all very lucky that, we absolutely love it. We do genuinely feel very passionate about it. So are willing to put in the hours. We get hyped by that kind of drive and hustle, but other people would just not want to work those kind of hours or put that much into their work, and kind of move up sticks, at last minute notice. So I think there's that kind of flip side.
You have to do a lot of the grunt work that all of us who have gone to say good universities and I don't know, stuff that you probably might think is a little bit above you. For example, the example I gave earlier of confirmation calls, it's literally my least favorite thing of the day. Or you can walk into a restaurant and you just have someone laugh at you and just make an absolute joke of basically your idea and say this will never work, whatever it is. And you're sort of there going what am I doing with myself sometimes? If you have this bad day when there's no's, and it just seems everything's building up against you, it can be really tough mentally, challenging. It can really be tough, but because you go through all these hard times, it makes the wins even so much sweeter. So yeah, there's some days where you come in, you're why am I doing this? Why am I working so much for these people just to treat me badly? Not the people internally, just some of the people you go out and see and you try and sell to from an operations side. And it's is this really why I paid so much for my education? To come here and be abused by an old man in his tapas restaurant. But no, I think the wins are worth it. But yeah, I think mentally you have to be ready to accept that there'll be some tasks you think are beneath you, but they're not. And it's these small tasks, the grind work, that really make you successful as a company. So it has to be done.
Also, there's a lot of chaos, right? When I say embrace the adventure, don't expect hey, there's for everything a process, right? Like I said, figure it out, or adapt, right? And so this is the way you roll, and how we will grow as a company, right? So if you don't why is this not working? Then take ownership and fix it yourself, right? So this is also not for everyone.
And the last thing I push add is there is no babysitting in a startup, if I could use this word. Sometimes in a big firm, you have your manager, which is micromanaging you and telling you exactly what you have to do and so on. Where here sometimes you'd be hey, there is something to fix, and in a maybe waiting for someone to fix it up, but if no one is doing it, it's because you're the one that has to fix it. And sometimes even it's it doesn't have anything related to what you do. For instance, the other day I fixed a tiny bug on the website, a visual thing. It was something little, but I didn't know who to ask for. I was okay, just something. It won't make the website crash. So just let's add just one single letter, and boom, it's fixed. And also sometimes you're hey, I don't know the answer to that question, but maybe your manager will know it. Maybe the manager of your manager will know it as well. So just Google it and you will find by your own. So you have to be able sometimes, and it can be frustrating to find the answers by your own, but also it will make you know more about yourself in the end as a person, because you will know how you think, how you react, and how you face challenges. So yeah, you don't get babysitted at a startup, and if you're used to it by different internship and classic firm and by university, it might be a big difference.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we've been getting a lot of questions in. So I'll move on to the next one quickly, which is from Nicole, who studies E&M at Oxford. And she's asked, with fewer opportunities to get hands-on experience currently, what does the panel advise students to do to navigate the difficult recruiting landscape and ensure they stand out?
Just create some content. Like no matter if you're good at audio, create a podcast. If you're good at recording yourself, create a video. If you're good at writing, like just like write an article or something. Like there is only 1% of the people on the internet that are creating content. So if you're 200 to listen it means like only statistically, like only 2 of you will create content. If you're the third one, makes you like part of this cool club. So create content, definitely. Like about something that you love. It can be something linked with like a professional, like with like university, but it can also be like a passion that you have. Like if you're super good into I don't know, like cooking vegetarian dishes, well, just go for it and create a blog about it, and people are waiting for it. Like just create some content. It will make you memorable if you do it.
And even if it's not content itself, right? There are always like companies out there that you would just love to join. It's that company, and like, you know, you have to show that as well. So you really need to like, you know, not only apply, but then like maybe like, hey, I've done this. Look at this. This is my ideation. This is my prototype. This is whatever, and like it will be appreciated by the right companies as well, right? So like just be proactive in that sense. Show your passion.
Yeah, think long term too. Like I think people also like, when they leave university, they like everyone's looking for this like perfect first job, and it's like you're gonna have to take some sort of risk on the way. Like starting a Choco is like a trainee business development at a startup. Like you're not gonna get paid crazy money, but you have to think about it. Okay, look, I'm gonna take this risk, I'm gonna put myself through it, and decide at the start won't do it. But then you can grow through, and then you can get more, and you can get equity in the company. But you won't get everything at the start, and so you have to take this risk and decide like yeah, if it's taking that short-term loss to get a gain in 6 months' time, then this is also something like you need to do.
Yeah, just to add a final note, I think they kind of said it all, but just say yes. And, you know, if you're looking just in London, why not look at other cities in the UK or outside of London? You know, there are just so many smaller companies out there that do want these super smart, like passionate, driven people. And so I think you've just kind of got to be super proactive and take that risk. Like now is the time to do it if there's going to be any.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think staying productive is definitely one of the best sort of ways, I think, to keep yourself going through all of what's going on at the moment. So there's some great ideas there for everyone to have a think about. And our next question is from Chen, who studies Komsky at MIT, who's asked, what made you all choose a startup over a corporate? Alex mentioned his parents were worried about this route. What would you suggest we say to those who doubt such a choice?
Yeah, I think your parents, when you start doing well, they'll always say that they were supporting you in the decision anyway. Like my parents remember the conversation very differently to now, so they did like a year ago, now that I'm doing okay. No, but like I think you just also got to explain that the environment they also grew up in is like very different to the one we grew up in now. It was like a far more structured environment and through people weren't taking as many risks. And yeah, I just think show them that you're passionate about it and that's like a feasible career and you're going to be working hard. And I think they will get behind you. They're not so scary in the end. So yeah, just if you show your passion, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. My parents really, really wanted me to be a lawyer. And I think like with these guys, the company was in stealth mode when I joined. Like I didn't know when I was getting my contract. I didn't know whether I was going to Chicago or San Francisco. I just got on a plane and they thought I was kind of going off to join some cult. They didn't trust it at all. And then now they're like, oh yeah, I knew you'd be fine. So I think A is just do it. And also make it clear that you'll deal with the consequences. I was like, if it turns out to be a terrible decision, I'll own it. I'll move back and I'll quit and I'll find another job. So I think make it clear that A, you're passionate, B, you'll be proactive with the consequences either way. And yeah, and like Alex said, times are changing. So I think we definitely are very fortunate to have more of that flexibility and this change. There's more opportunities where you don't just have to kind of follow one career path. We do have just a bit more kind of flexibility in it.
Just a fun fact here. since like the parents were a bit worried, right? There was literally someone who, as he said, like we were in stealth, are in stealth, and so like there was someone who moved to Berlin from Portugal who like one day after his starting day booked a flight, had already a flight booked just in case it was a scam, right? Turned like, oh well, we're not a scam after all, right? So this is then he sticked around.
And one last thing about this question about the money, let's say, and stability of the company. Like the funny discussion I had with a friend, like you may know like Airbus as a company, like they have to throw away a lot of people. And I have a friend like he was like, yeah, like I have the super like secure job, like permanent contract at Airbus like 2 years ago, and now he's about to get laid off. And I'm like, hey, like at Choco we raised 70 million, so if ever I get laid off, it's gonna be like in 3 years time because of cash flow, for instance. So also like if you choose like to go in the super scale up, you have less chance of getting fired than going in a corporate right now with COVID. So like the calculation sometimes can be a bit tricky, but it can be in favor of like a scale up. And if you choose it accordingly compared to a classic company like in a field that right now is suffering. So in the end, it's a calculation to be done.
Also, yeah, I think there's a lot to be taken inspiration there from if you're trying to convince your parents to let you work at a startup. So I hope everyone's taken that on board. The next question is from Alicia, who studies economics at Leeds. She's asked, how has Choco aimed to differentiate its services from competitors such as Plate IQ?
Well, like Plate IQ. Who?
Yeah, Plate IQ.
I've never heard of Plate IQ.
I'm just Googling them.
We have other competitors, obviously, which are, it's obviously healthy to have a competitive game going on and like to have like this villain, let's say, right? And I think I mean, like I always would say that like it sounds cringy, but like, you know, the culture will make a difference in the end of the team, right? Product wise, like we cannot really tell, like, you know, it might be that some people go into a different direction, right? Like other competitors are maybe more focused on the supplier side already, are more focused on or have different assumptions. And like I think we're all in the state where like trying to prove what will be the right path, right? So this is like still something for all of us in this industry to figure out what will be the right path to go down.
Competition is also super healthy. Like it's actually a really good thing and focuses the mind a lot. And I think our way of dealing with competition, at least from an operations side, is we never talk bad about competition. We just focus on like what we do well, and we know if we execute well, then we go through it. And people actually really appreciate that. We have a competitor here in Spain, and they have a very different approach. They talk very badly about us, and it's really nice actually when they go to some of our users, and then our users will like ring us and go, "Hey, like these guys came in." And they're saying, yeah, they were talking bad about you. And we said, actually, no, these guys are pretty cool. And so I think if with anything like that, it's just focus on yourself. Yes, be aware of what's going on, but focus on yourself, truly believe in yourself, and you just out execute and win. That's basically the way you look at it.
Awesome. Yeah. So for those who are thinking about maybe starting their own startup companies, Mohammed, who studies social science at UCL, is wondering what the biggest challenges are that startup companies face in their first few months and how to mitigate these risks.
Well, I think, you know, at the very beginning, like it's about having the right assumption and finding a product market fit, right? Like at Choco, we were very, very lucky to be just on spot with our first MVP, and it just worked out for us, right? Like, but if I go back to my own startup, which obviously was not very successful, we had the wrong assumptions, right? So, okay, yeah, like to give you some insight, we thought like, okay, we'll get 2 clients in the first month, 5 in the second, and 10 in the third, and so on. But then like what happened was that we underestimated like B2B sales, that the sales cycles were so long, and you know, like I talked about Adidas, right? Like they were interested, but like it took 6 months for them like to get to a decision, for instance, right? And that like just it just kills you in that sense, right? It's assumption that like kills you, right? And the team has to be just like a super fit, right? Just not like, oh, I need a techie founder and like, he's okay. It's a kind of similar story of what Leo said, like, don't hire when you're not sure about their cultural fit, right? You have to just like vibe from the very beginning, and it's super crucial. And that gives you a big leverage. If the team is right, then investors will also see that, right? It's a big thing for investors as well.
And like from my personal experience, don't over focus on the product. Like I think when you're founding something for the first time or creating something for the first time, at least, I was so worried about these like tiny little features on my website. I was like, hey, this is gonna make a massive difference. Think of it, like work out, okay, what is the biggest assumption that underlies the success of my business, and do everything you can to prove it wrong. And then if you can't prove it wrong, then you've got like a good business there. But I was so worried about all these little features that literally had no tangible impact on the business. I didn't think enough about the distribution and how to actually reach like potential customers. And I think sometimes you're founding a company, or like I'm the CEO and founder, you're not, like you have to go out and you have to like really push and really hustle and get those users there. And there's no trick to it. It's not like school or university, you look at past papers, predict the questions coming up. It's not, it's pure grind, and you just have to force it, because if you don't, nothing's going to happen from it. So don't focus on the product too much, just focus on grinding and getting those users.
And there's a quote from Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, about MVPs. If you're not embarrassed about your MVP, then it's then you're like wrong, right? Like you should, like if you should be embarrassed, to a certain extent. It should obviously work, but like don't get hung up on like being perfectionist, basically.
You're on mute, mate, sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we're still getting quite a few questions through, so if it's okay, we'll try and get through a few more. So our next question is from Colleen, who studies neuroscience at KCL, who's asking, while growing a startup, do you think inputs from cognitive scientists and behavioral scientists can be valuable and be capitalized on?
So much. Like, so much of it is just dealing with people. Just, I mean, again, talking from the operations side, like the number of people we meet every day who just have a completely different outlook. You've got the like early adopters who are very happy to take the chance with tech. There are the people who are completely old school and just want to deal with pen and paper. So in terms of just like persuasive rhetoric, kind of being able to gauge how people think, and what's going to kind of make them tick and convince them. That's just like one aspect, but also in terms of just like managing a team as well is just a completely different skill set. What motivates people is completely different from one person to the other. So those are just like two of many ways I think it can be capitalized on.
And I think like to go more into the direction of what you're saying about cognitive scientists and behavioral scientists, like I don't think we're in a stage where we have to think of this right now, maybe at some point, but like something that is like very similar maybe is like, making use of like user experience researchers who then evaluate the behaviors of people, how they interact with the app, even like where their eyes are going when they like use the screens. This is something where it goes already in the similar direction, but like in an early stage, that's maybe like too overkill, right? You just do the approach of going into a cafe, showing people your app and buying them a coffee, right? That's how you validate if something works or not at the very beginning.
Yeah, all sales is psychology. Like there's literally just the psychology and like working out how you can manipulate sounds really wrong, but how you can get people to use your service or buy your service. So everything we sort of do for the onboarding is all about using those psychological techniques, be that labeling, mirroring. It's all to do with human psychology. When you're organizing a meeting with someone, giving them two possible slots, one of which they won't be able to make, so they take a meeting at the time you want to meet. So yeah, like it can be used in operations 100%.
Great, yeah. So next question, moving on to Mohammed, who studies accounting at Westminster, who's asked, is having experience at a large firm necessary to seal top positions later in your career, perhaps in startups? So some of you have had corporate experiences at large firms prior to Choco.
I mean, like the way I see it moving forwards, that people won't see people won't put people in boxes. Like if you're like a recruiter in a startup or in a big firm, like you won't only stick to like the names that you have, and the more we grow forward, the more like exchanges from one to another. So if you start as a startup and then go to like a big corporate, the corporate will be happy to have you because you have experience from a startup. And if you work in a big corporate and the startup is becoming a scale up and wants people like more experience, like they will be happy to have you because you were in a big firm before. So there is no like wrong ways at all. And I mean, this is absolutely not a blocker. So just like my advice would be like to try both. So you have like a balanced kind of like a resume, and you can say that you have experiments, all of it. So if you can make sure to get like one experience in consulting, one in a big firm, and one in a startup, for instance, then for you can know what you know what you prefer in terms of environments. And for the people that will hire you afterwards, they will say, okay, like the person is curious because like she or he tried different kind of things before joining us. So definitely not a blocker. I mean, choose wisely and don't think about, oh damn, like I only have big firm, I cannot apply to a startup, they will never get me. And the other saying is true as well. Don't put yourself in your own box that you're digging. Today, like the society is evolving, and there is more and more startups and more people like doing the switch. So this is fine.
Also, like
I think.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Gab, you go.
Go ahead.
I'll stop. Okay. I was just going to say it's not necessarily what you've done, but like why you did it is always going to be what I think they look at. So yes, you can list off all these huge like names that you've done, but if you can't say why you wanted to go there and like why you were intrigued by this company, then it's just going to look like you just did it kind of for the name. So if you say you went there like, you know, for the challenge, for the curiosity, and can actually say what you learned, that's going to be way more valuable than the kind of name on the box.
There are also just so many factors, and there's no blueprint in that way. There might be companies out there where it is necessary to have top positions at a large firm to get better positions later on, right? But there are also like companies out there who don't necessarily look at that, and like they just look at what you can do. Speaking out of a personal experience, and this will be for anyone else different, like I did not have that many opportunities in my corporate experiences to like get more responsibilities. You had to literally wait for someone to leave the company or a new team to be like created to then be considered, or you would be then quitting the corporate and they would say like, oh, how can we like keep you, like would a team lead position suit you best, right? Like would it and that's like just the way it goes, I guess. And that's why like, you know, in the startup environment, it just goes way faster.
Great. And so I think maybe for those who haven't had experience working in a startup before, Victor, who's studying law at Oxford, is wondering that several of you mentioned that startups are not for everyone. And so who is working at a startup suited to?
I mean, the cool thing is being comfortable with being uncomfortable is a classic line that gets thrown around, but it is so true. If you hate being like faced with kind of a lot of unpredictable situations one day after the other and not knowing what you're going to be doing next week or where you're going to be, then it's probably not the one for you. If you like to kind of have everything kind of planned out and be good at planning everything out in a very like methodical way, then again, it probably just isn't suited.
You have to be super hungry and motivated. Like you have to want to succeed and want to grow, and then be able to take total accountability for it. Like it's really, really clear in a startup if you're not pulling weight or if you're not performing, and so If you don't want to have total accountability and you're not hungry for this accountability and ownership, then it's probably not going to be the best place for you. But if you do want this, you want to grow, you want to have ownership, then yeah, it's an amazing place to be.
Also, like I guess it's, you know, I already said earlier that like when you don't have the right mindset, like completely honest, like at the very early stage when we're looking, you know, at our friends who could like potentially we could hire, like there were not that many that I saw like in my personal like friend zone, because simply from the fact that they were like in a secure company, they had a way different mindset, and they were like exactly what Leo said, like they were in this, you know, in this bucket, and it would be hard to get them out, right? And you know exactly those people who are like, I really want to do something else. It's just like corporate is boring me, and I would just want to like, you know, go on and go on a ride and like learn like indefinitely, right? Like continuously. And I think that's why, like, if you're more on the safe side of things and you want like a clear path for the next 5 years, probably a startup is not for you.
And last thing on that, I think like it's suited for you, like if when you used to play like a video game like 10 or 15 years ago, like you were using a cheat code. Like startup is like a cheat code, because you arrive and you get the cheat code, you learn more in a less time. It's a cheat code because you're working with only passionate people around, and you're not as people that are just here for a job. It's a cheat code because you can be like ahead of whatever you want to be faster than if you join like a classic company. It's a cheat code because after, I don't know, like 5 years or 10 years, if they're like IPO and if it's successful, like you can get rich with equity and so on. So I mean, it's for the person that likes cheat codes.
Also, I think we'll aim for 2 more questions if that's okay. Cool. So next one is from Yulia, who studies modern languages at Edinburgh, who's asking, do any of you have any career regrets or think you wish you could have done anything differently so far? If you could do it again, what would you change?
I'm pretty young, so I think it's like 1.5 years career. So this hasn't been too much time for self-reflection yet. But no, like I'm super happy to be here. I've absolutely loved it. I generally come into work every day and get very excited to be with the team. And when you're working like very long hours, I think this is quite rare. So yeah, no, like I absolutely love it. Wouldn't change it at all.
I have advice for you guys, and that is, don't regret anything. Like that sounds cringy, but like I think one way to approach it, like throughout your career, is like, you know, everything is an experience, like positive or negatively, right? So like if you don't like something, if you like choose a startup, it doesn't work out, right? Like, or you have a shitty manager, like that's an experience. Like okay, move on, right? Like didn't work out, but you know better, or you know you've learned then like how you would run a company, or like how you would do things, right? Like being in a corporate for 10 years, like I would not, and don't regret it. Yes, I didn't grow as fast as I grew now, or learned that much as I learn now, but it's all paved a path, right? Like there's a stigma also around corporates, like that everything's bad, but there's a reason why they are established and they work, right? And like at some point it will also like move, right? Like we'll also like take parts from a corporate and learn from these experiences. And so like I think like it's a really good mindset to have, to not regret anything, right? Like you don't want to sit like on your deathbed and thinking like, what should I've done better? But like, okay, I'm content, like everything was an experience, and I'm happy, right? So
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Obviously, getting fired from my first job out of Oxford was a bit of a shock to the system. But God, one of the best things that ever happened, because otherwise I would never have then been like looking on Facebook for jobs. And I would never have come across Choco. And I think it was super good. I think I was probably quite complacent coming out being like, yeah, I got a good degree. I can kind of get a good job. So I think it was such a valuable learning for me, and it really just threw me into the deep end. and that's kind of how I ended up here. So absolutely zero regrets. I mean, it was a interesting lesson, but such a valuable one.
Awesome. So I think we'll move on to our final question now, which is from Adam, who studies chemistry at Oxford. And he's asking, what does the panel think will be the main silver linings from the crisis? Some startups have struggled and others thrived. What does the future hold for your industry and Choco?
I personally think that like in the industry that they're realizing, oh, all right, like our industry is fucked up, right? Like there is just like tons of you know, dependencies that's like are not accounted for, that's there's a lack of transparency in the whole supply chain. Like there's no safety nets for all the restaurants out there, and that like they are now like too late, like looking into possibilities how to prevent this in the future, right? Like digitalizing things, bringing in more transparency, creating organizations whatsoever. But I think like for our industry itself, like this is like, okay, this is now becoming very clear that like it is very old school, very far behind, and it has to adapt or die, right? I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gab said it. It basically kind of just showed adaptability is going to win out. Those people who are just very like fixed in their ways weren't able to kind of pivot or thrive when we were just thrown into a situation that no one could have anticipated. So like we're lucky that, you know, we're kind of small enough, fast enough to be able to like adapt to the situation. And then in terms of the industry wise, it's been frankly pretty devastating for the restaurant industry. But again, as mentioned earlier, it's shown what, you know, we have a case for tech in this industry. The supply chain, all the flaws were just so blatant. And we're only really going to be able to fix that if we have, again, like I've said, the transparency, the adaptability, being able to actually get resources from A to B where they should be, and like reallocate resources fairly and efficiently. And it's obvious that digitizing the supply chain is going to be a way forward in this.
Yeah, I think what the guy said there is exactly what's going to happen. And it's still super uncertain for us. This is the thing about startups. Like if you want to like February time and we just raised like 70 million in the space of like 3 months, you'd be like, wow, okay, success is guaranteed. And then there's a crisis. And now I think it's like 40% of restaurants in Spain are probably going to be closed after this pandemic. So you look at it like, okay, fuck, okay, this is quite a challenge. But it also, every time there's like massive wipeout like this, it also provides a huge platform to be the people driving forward the change. I think that's very exciting. And I think we're well placed to do that on the basis of our culture. And I think the time we sort of spend working from home, working these long hours when it seems like the industry is sort of on its knees, I think that sort of brings the company together and makes us very, very well placed to thrive on the opportunity that the crisis is presenting now.
Great. Yeah. So I think that was the last question. So I'll just conclude by saying thank you very much again to all our panelists for sharing your time and your fascinating insights and advice with us. And thank you also to everyone watching and for all your varied questions. We hope you found it helpful, and we look forward to welcoming you all again soon at our upcoming events. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. And
Thank you. We're hiring in Spain, Spanish speakers. Hit me up.
Or in engineering.
Yeah, if basically like some questions were not answered, like you can just like shoot us an email, like our email, like it's like our first name at choco.com. So you have Alex at choco.com, EC at choco.com, it's Gab at choco.com, and Leo at choco.com. So don't hesitate, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. It was a pleasure to share our learnings with you guys.